Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
Today, we are continuing our samurai principles that we've been going through. We've done one on courage. And today, we're doing one on courtesy, which is politeness and propriety, professionalism, appropriateness, all of those things.
Right.
But really the samurai principles of politeness and propriety.
Yes. Yeah. And like all of them, they're all important. And you're going to find in different times in your life, you're gonna need some of them more than others.
Yeah.
Lots of times, especially as adults, lots of these messages are just reminders. But I mean, that's what we all need. You know, I always like the quote that I heard long ago from one of my early mentors is, successful people don't need to be told what to do, but they do need reminders.
Yeah.
Which to me meant that as you grow and get better and your knowledge base and even your wisdom improves and increases, don't forget the little basics and little things. And it's okay to be reminded. And hopefully we're reminding ourselves, but it's also good to listen to a podcast like this, that you get reminders of things that we should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you really look at these, core principles, any core principles in anything, we're really talking about basics and foundation and fundamentals. And the reason people stress these and the reason they're so important and people write them on walls and write them in books and things like that is because they are easy to forget.
Yeah.
And I it's funny, I almost can't think of one that's forgotten more, than this one, where it's that kind of, it's that politeness, right? It's that, being courteous to other people. I almost said other people's, being courteous to other people, being aware of your surroundings and, being respectful of the people around you. I think this is really important.
Yeah. And if you have kids and something that I know you did, and certainly that my wife and I did as well with our kids, is we wanted them to be polite. We wanted them to be polite to other people. And I think the main thing is you should be polite and nice to people that cannot do anything for you. Right. In this world it's easy to be polite to the person that you want something from. You're doing a sale and you're super nice and you shine the apple and all those things. That's fine. I mean, it's better than being, miserable when somebody walks in the trash sale. But that's not really what it should be. It should be part of you, right? And one thing that I always taught my kids, and I do myself, is I'm going to hold the door for somebody, regardless of you're old or younger or whatever. And the unfortunate thing, and I'm sure people that hold doors for others notice this, that if somebody's older than you, older than me, they always say thank you. At least half the people that if they're younger than me, they don't say a word. Mm-hmm. Do not say a word. And it's like, I have to bite my tongue. Sometimes I'm not in the mood and I yell out, "You're welcome," to them. But I have to say that I don't do that every time. So I'm working on improving to not do it at all and say, that's just them, that's their problem. But anyways, getting back to that politeness, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything, but a little bit of effort, but it doesn't cost you any money to do. But what it will do, it's amazing what it'll do.
Yeah. And I think it's funny how you talk. I mean, I love the example of holding the door, right? Because the number of times, I'm walking into a Starbucks or someplace like that, and the person in front of me doesn't hold the door and they're literally like 5 feet from me. Yeah. You always have that. I always have that initial gut reaction, like, "Hey, thanks a lot for holding the door."
Right.
But I also know, that usually there's 2 reasons why people don't do things like that, right? Number one is just they were never taught, that this is the right thing to do, and I think that goes to upbringing, that goes to environment, that goes to a lot of things. And I know people listening to this podcast were probably raised in a way to be polite to other people and to be courteous to other people, but then the other reason why people don't do it, that I like to think, is just, we get so caught up. I mean, when you have the myriad of things running through your brain, during your day to day, sometimes we just forget.
Yep.
The third reason is sometimes people are just mean, right? But I always like to, keep the positive spin and say, okay, it's probably either they just don't know that they're supposed to do it, or they just got busy, So I think, that speaks to, the people who are listening to this podcast who are achievers. I guarantee you, like, what you're supposed to be doing, but we do get caught up. So that's why it's so important to go back to these principles and focus on it. So let's talk action steps,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about, how can we put this into our daily life
Uh-huh.
starting today? Even if you're already doing it, but how can we just be more mindful of it?
Yeah. So number one is just showing courtesy. It's one of our black belt principles
Hmm.
that we have at the dojo that we say at the end of every class, and just being courteous to others, and whether it is holding the door, saying please, saying thank you, and just having that attitude of gratitude. Basically, I mean that's really what it's all about, and it is a mindset. And what that does is that builds relationships. And the people that don't know you are like, oh, maybe that improved their day. Maybe it made their day. You held the door for them. You said thank you, or you acknowledge them. Maybe they don't get that anywhere in their life. And even though you're a stranger, you did it for them and it made their day. You don't know the effect, the positive effect you can have on people by just being more courteous.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just exactly, it's being mindful of it.
Yeah.
It's going out into the day thinking I'm gonna go overboard in politeness for one or two things. I'm gonna start to build those habits. Because we can't build habits by accident, right?
Right.
It just doesn't work that
Well,
way.
bad habits you can.
Bad habits you can totally develop by accident. But I can make the argument that on purpose you're not doing the positive things,
You could.
so
Okay.
so you're
Fair enough.
defaulting. Um, but definitely, I think we need to be thoughtful about it. So we have to think, okay,
Right.
I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to focus on saying thank you more often. I'm going to
Hmm.
focus on saying please more often. I'm going to focus on holding the door more often. And just pick one or two things that maybe you're falling short on,
Yeah.
and just try to get better at that. Maybe it's in your own house. Maybe it's you showing more courtesy to your spouse or
Right.
your kids for things they
Right.
do. I think just starting to build that habit, and doing it over and over again, and almost kind of, measuring and managing it will help you.
And I think what you mentioned, I want to expand on a little bit. I think that is important that we are the people that we're around the most. We should show more courtesy, and oftentimes we're the meanest to, the people that we're closest to, and we let our hair down, so to speak. So I think not that we shouldn't be truthful and honest with the people that are closest to us. We also can be courteous and kind at the same time. Instead of saying exactly how you feel, maybe you take a beat, take a
Yeah.
5-second pause, take a breath, and then say it. And saying something kinder, but still getting your point across is always usually better, especially when it's dealing with your spouse, right? And this is obviously easier said than done. And the practice is just what it means. Practice. You're gonna fail. You're gonna make mistakes. But just overall, just being more courteous all around. I think picking up after yourself at home. Doing something unexpected. If you have kids, if all of a sudden they put the dishes away, or they unload the dishwasher, or they load the dishwasher. Those little things that kids can do at home without being told. I think that's a sign. I mean, it's not exactly politeness, but it is showing courtesy.
Yeah. And I think that's good. Nobody wants to be the person who, shows a ton of gratitude out in the world and has a spouse who says, well, geez, he never thanks me for anything.
Right.
He just points out
Right.
all the things I don't do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like people fall into that with their
For
spouses,
sure.
with their kids, with
Yeah.
even with just their close friends, so trying to make that politeness a
Right.
daily habit in your interactions. I think that's
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Moving on to number two, let's talk about reputation. I mean, while
Yeah.
I think politeness really does help your reputation because people see you as,
Hmm.
kind of that person, I think part of reputation, is the way you act when you're in places with other people,
Right.
right? What we kind of do in the silence of our own home is not always seen by the public eye, but the way we
Hmm.
act when we're in public, when we're in groups, has a large impact on our reputation, what people talk about when they see us.
Right. It sure does. And that's something that if you lose your reputation, it's so hard to get back.
Yeah.
And so it should be guarded, and especially if you're a teenager or you're a parent of kids going into their teens or in their teens. I think it's important that you talk about guarding the reputation. That you talk about how you act in public and how people perceive you, whether right or wrong. It is important, that you don't give them extra ammo to make you look bad. Be smart about it. And how we act in public versus how we act at home should be different. Not different in the sense that you're beating your family at home and you're super nice to everybody. Not that.
Right.
But I mean, the things you do and really how you dress. How does it doesn't matter if you have a fancy car, but it does matter if it's clean or not. Right.
Yeah.
You could have a car that's 15, 20 years old, and it has a lot of miles on it, but you can keep it clean.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's part of your reputation. Is your car clean? Is the inside? Like if you pick somebody up and, it looks like a bomb went off in your car because your inside of your car is trashed. I think that's part of the reputation too. It doesn't mean it has to be like you're going to sell it clean in the inside, but that again is all I think all part of it. And if you look at it on the business side, it's kind of like branding. Your reputation for business would be your branding, and we can say what we're going to do, but when somebody actually comes into your business, do they feel it? Is it part of that? So
and I think just being I think being respectful when you go places, and in martial arts we use the term sensory acuity all the time, right? And it's just it's kind of that awareness of your surroundings. If you walk into a silent yoga class, don't start banging a drum. Right. You know what I mean? If you walk into a room where people are being reflective, don't be the loudest person right when you walk in. I think it's if you walk into a room where it's everyone's kind of business casual dress, and we used to have dress code, right? But when you're going to a work event and it's business casual, don't wear flip-flops and your swim trunks. You know what I mean? Just because you can, be respectful of the environment that you're going into. And I don't think that people say, well, geez, that takes away from my individuality. I don't think it does. I think we live in a world where you can still be a complete individual, but still be respectful of kind of the social area you're in.
Yeah. And I think if you need attention that badly, you need to work on yourself. You need to go back and listen to all these podcasts that we're way over 400 podcasts. I think you start listening to some of them if that's how you feel. Because I'm all for it. My son pitches, and he's in college, and he likes to wear really crazy shoes. He likes his different color shoes, but that's okay. I mean, that's his way. His uniform's his uniform, but hopefully his performance on the mound, they're not looking at his shoes, they're looking at his performance. So it's okay to be individual, and it's okay to stand out in certain ways. But if, like you said, the dress, if you're coming in shorts and a t-shirt when everybody's wearing a collared shirt, and you're just doing it because, like you said, you can, I think you need to look inward. That's telling you about yourself. And do you have to be a jerk all the time? I mean, is it okay to be polite once in a while? I think the answer is yes. It's okay to be polite. And what kind of reputation do you want to be? You can still be crazy like you dress very business, and you are very professional with what you do, but also you're a little crazy too sometimes. And you have that balance, but you also are appropriate. That when you're at certain places, you're going to act a certain way, and I think that's the balance that we want to strike.
I'm crazy most of the time.
Yes. Okay. Not some of the time, most of the time.
Excuse me. And then, number 3. So I think both of these, factor into, what we always talk about is leadership by example.
Yeah.
And number 3 is really about creating a positive environment.
Right.
Giving people reminders is great, but I feel like, you can really be a hypocrite if you're telling people, if you're telling your kids to be polite, to say please and thank you, but you're not doing it
at home.
At home, wherever. And I always make the joke, like when I ask Siri to schedule an appointment for me, on my phone, I always say thank you, and my kids think it's so weird. They're like, Dad, why are you thinking? And I'm like, because you know what? If I get out of the habit of doing it, I'm gonna get out of the habit of doing it everywhere. So creating that positive environment, that environment of politeness and propriety, among your friends, family, and everybody you interact with.
I think that's such a good reminder, because let's say you're going to a family party, and let's say you're coming in, not that you're coming in late, but a lot of people are already there at the family party. How do you want to come in? Do you want to come in, and moaning and complaining about, yeah, my wife was taking time, the traffic was this and that, and maybe all that was true, but is that how you want to lead into the family party, the gathering that you're going to?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's probably not a good way to enter, and you're not creating a good environment, and everybody around you, all your families, can be like a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or if you do it all the time, they're going to be like, well, this is how he is, and then maybe they'll stop inviting you. I mean, think about that. So creating a positive environment is really everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Let's say you walk into a coffee shop, Starbucks, and I know this to be true with you because I've seen it. You walk in, and you're nice, and you talk to people, and to the barista, you're making conversation with that person, and you're being polite. You're saying thank you. But what are you doing? You're creating a nice environment.
Yeah.
You're not looking down at them because maybe they're a millionaire and they're just doing that job because they like to. There's people like that
Yeah.
that do those jobs, or maybe they're just starting out, and they're doing this to make ends meet. It doesn't matter. You should be nice to them because they're a person. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
nice to them, like I said earlier, because they can give you something or do something for you. So all of that is creating that positive environment wherever you go.
Yeah. And what public service announcement for this one, right? And I think this one more than a lot of them, is that,
That's
and
funny.
you talk about this all the time, right? Like we either lighten up a room by coming into it or leaving
Right.
it,
Yep.
and our actions,
Yep.
cause ripples. The ripple effect happens, and it's very real.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're the type of person who's creating this environment of positivity, of politeness, of appropriateness, of just being
Mm-hmm.
a good person, people are going to see that and people are going to pick up those cues and carry it forward.
Right.
But conversely, when you don't hold the door for somebody and they notice it, they're immediately going to start thinking the world's terrible and probably be less polite to other people. So, really, this is one of those podcasts when I talk to people, I say, this is so important because it not only impacts you and your success and how people impact you, but this is that ripple effect that can really make the world a better place to live.
Yeah, and it made me think of like your kids. Like if your kids are, and I'm not talking 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds because they're developing, but when they get to 5 and 6 and older, and they're jerks, you got to look at yourself. Maybe you're a jerk. Maybe it's not what you tell your kids, it's what you show your kids. And what you show your kids, not just in public, but what you show them at home. So if you're polite to them at home and you're kind to them at home and you're encouraging to them at home, they're going to be that type of person when they're outside your view. I loved hearing your kids are so polite, your kids are so nice. I loved hearing that, and I'm thinking I wish they're a little nicer at home. That was my thought, because of course they're going to always let their hair down at home and yell at mom and dad and different things like that. But I can say that, and I know your 2 girls too, very polite. I've never had either of your girls. I never felt like they were mean or nasty. They're always polite greetings and all of that.
Okay.
And I think that's a reflection really of the parents. Parents love to brag about how good their kids are, but then when their kids go off and they're not very good, they take no blame.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it would be 100% of their blame, but honestly, right? I mean, that as a parent, that should be your number one job, is to raise proper adults.
That's like the best division of politeness and propriety.
Thanks.
Is politeness is
Yeah.
Is doing the pleases and thank yous, and that's propriety is really where you do it and how, and like in
Right.
group. But
Mhm.
kids are the great example, because I was thinking the same thing when we were doing this podcast. Is everyone at Wegmans, oh my God, your kids are so polite. They always say
Yeah.
thank you. They're so nice.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, which kids are you talking about? Because at home,
Yeah.
it's not
Right.
exactly like that as much as you think it is.
No, but they
They are right.
When it comes right down to it, I know, like with my daughter, she's an adult now and moved out, but I know with her, and I've talked to you about this, how she is at home and sometimes her mouth at home, but how she is in public and how she is in a professional setting. I mean, everybody's like, oh, she's so great. I'm like, okay. But she is, because she heard that and she was brought up that way. So she knows the appropriateness of when to say certain things and how to act in public and how to act in that. So, I feel that my wife and I did a good job, with that. And I think that's like I said, you got to go back to your actions. How are you on a daily basis with the people that are around you?
What a great lesson, and just a thing
Yeah.
to think about. That's awesome.
Yep.
But let's go back and let's review. So politeness and
Okay.
propriety, is one of the samurai principles that we've been going through for the past couple of weeks. Super important because it has that ripple effect. Let's go through our action steps. So number one, make politeness a habit in your daily actions.
Right.
Really, make it a mindful point to be
Mm-hmm.
polite and courteous to people as you see them.
Right. And number two is your reputation. That's something that you should guard, something you should work on, something that you should try to improve on consistently. So your outside reputation with other people, but also in your family, your reputation. You need to make sure you're working on both.
And number three is creating that positive environment. So really leadership by example. You do the things, people will see you do the things, and that will pay forward and carry forward into their day. And just has a generally positive impact on the world. So create that positive environment. Thanks for checking out this podcast, everybody. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. We will see you then. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.